Hello, everybody. Nice to see everyone. Happy 2024. Hi, Corinne.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Hi, Laura.
Hi there. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And actually, our opening question has to do with the New Year. Hi, John.
Hello.
Um, I'll put it in the chat for now. Got a little slide, but I'll put it in the chat. And so I don't know if you all have seen this in, various like emails you receive or Instagram or whatever it happens to be. But in a lot of different places, I see people asking, like, what's your word for 2024? Have you all seen that?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if you've chosen a word yet. I have, but that's my personal word. Like, I think I could probably choose a professional word too in this instant. Ooh, I don't know what I just sent you guys. But anyways, yeah, the first one's the thing. But yeah, if you want to just take a minute and think about professionally, what's one word? You can use personal too. It's up to you. But what's one word that describes your hope for 2024? Okay, we got some G's so far. We got growth and grace, self-care and joy. Good. Another growth, being effective. Excellent. Joy. Love that. The word joy somehow brings joy too, at least to me. Organize. Oh my goodness. Yep. I don't know if anyone watched 30 Rock, but Tina Fey's character, she would go to the Container Store. It would make her very, very happy. And I was like, I recognize that situation. Right. Learning, happiness. Good. Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing your word. Calm. Yeah, I'm gonna, my word is present. Some collaboration. Oh, I like collaboration too. I want to use that one. Okay. Well, welcome. And if you've just joined, the question to help us all start to connect, the question is, if you were to choose one word of what you're hoping for yourself in 2024, what it would be. And so that's people are sharing their one word. Thank you, John Lind. All right, so we got John with us today. We have Kelsey, of course. And I think most of you all are aware, you saw in the invite that today we're going to be celebrating Dr. Larry Wexler. I also have something for us to be thinking about when it comes to professional development. Has anyone ever seen the Title 2A report before? And it's interesting because there are a couple Title 2A reports or title, yeah, and there's one that's from higher education, and then it's more about how teachers are being prepared, and then there's a report that actually comes from the department in the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education, and it's about the professional development that's being done in states, right? And so they have a report that came out in August, and so it's obviously the most recent. And so I have some numbers to share with you from them and some questions and some thinking for you. So that's my description as folks are still adding their words. Like rejuvenation too, partnership. These are fantastic words. All right. Without further ado, well, actually, let me make sure I'm actually sharing my, there we go. All right, so that was, here's our word. And of course, we are a learning lab, right? So, we've always been a learning lab, but I really like that idea. And Stephanie Autumn presented it to us when she gave our keynote 3 years back about this idea that like we're a laboratory and we're trying things out together. This is a safe space to be learning together, because I know when you go back to your state, you have to be the expert, right? You're the leader, you know everything there. But here we get to know some things together and not know some things together. It's a safe space for that. All right, so here's our high level agenda. I'm going to share a little something from our research minute, and then I'm going to finish it up after we celebrate Dr. Wexler. But I at least want to get you thinking about it now, and then we'll delve deeper into the numbers in the second half of our time today, or the third half. I don't know who says that, but I enjoy that. And then we'll also talk about how we're going to share our learning in the future. And a little bit of SIG Network news, including choosing dates for the SPDIG National Meeting when most people are going to be available. And for our celebration of Dr. Wexler, we have a little quiz about his life that I think is going to be fun. Larry's going to share some of his lessons learned, some of his tips for us, what he's seen over a long career. And then you'll have a chance to share over Menti or using your mic and video or in the chat, just some memories, recollections, well wishes for Dr. Wexler. All right, so here's the beginning of the research minute. So Title 2A, Title 2, Part A, I should say, funds. And again, they are overseen by the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. Each state receives them. They're formula grants. So the SPDIG is a discretionary grant where we don't necessarily need to give states the money. The formula grants are pretty much required unless the state proves itself to be risky. And that's a longer story. But the idea is that they're spent for professional development, evaluation systems, and school leadership development. And the big idea is that is to be used for high quality, personalized professional development that is evidence-based and can focus on a broad range of topics to improve teachers' instructional practice, and administrators, by the way. And professional development in ESEA is defined as sustained. And this says in ESEA, not standalone, not one day, not short-term workshops, intensive, collaborative, job embedded, data-driven, and classroom focused, which is consistent with what research suggests is most effective. And so we have a couple questions for you, and so be preparing to respond to a Zoom poll in just a moment. But the purpose of Title 2A, these are the big 4 goals, is to increase student academic achievement, to improve educator quality and effectiveness, to increase the number of effective educators, and to provide low-income and minority students with greater access to effective educators, which is the big idea of ESEA, or basically what the department does. So the questions for you is, which of the requirements of evidence-based professional development as listed in ESEA and lived out by Title 2A best describes your SPDIG's PD? So you're just going to choose one. Are you doing the best job at being sustained? Are you doing the best job at being intensive? Or is it collaborative? Or is it job embedded or data driven or classroom focused? We know that you do more than one, but if you had to choose one that you're doing really, really well, that your strength lies in, what it would be. So I'm going to, Kelsey, I don't need to stop sharing, right? Oh, and this is, it's the national meeting question that's showing right now. Do you want us to answer it, Kelsey, or do we?
There we go. Sorry about that.
Thank you. And so you can answer both questions. So the second question is, which area would you like to focus on this year with the aim of improving it? So I would like our SPDIG's professional development to be more sustained, intensive, collaborative, job embedded, data driven, or classroom focused. So go ahead and let us know. Okay, and Kelsey, just give me a heads up when we are getting at max capacity.
Sounds good. We're at about 70% right now. I'll give it one more moment here.
Right, thanks. Okay, so for responses, we have sustained is the number one area that folks feel like it's a real strength for them in their SPDIG PD. Collaborative is the second largest area of strength. And then we have data driven. Next is intensive, then job embedded, and then classroom focused. So those are strengths, and then areas that folks want to work on. Sustained again is the winner, interestingly, and then data driven, and then collaborative, and then job embedded and classroom focused. So that's really interesting, right? These are the strengths and the needs pretty much match up exactly. I think that would make for a good discussion. All right, so I'm gonna we are gonna come back to the Title IIA report and delve into the data. But in the meantime, we do want to make sure, just to finish out the polls, we are planning for the SPDIG, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. We're planning for the SPDIG national meeting next October, and we are looking at a new spot to host it in due to everyone's feedback. There was a lot of good feedback, and then there were some concerns. So we're finding a new place, and we want to make sure we have the date that the most people are available. So Kelsey, if you could launch the final Zoom poll, we'll finish that and then we will, there you go. Okay. And I am going to go back to sharing my slides so that we can introduce, hopefully he needs no introduction, but just in case someone has not met Dr. Wexler. All right.
Jennifer, while you're working on that, I'm going to go ahead and say I'm really excited that we've got Dr. Larry Wexler with us today. I always look forward, every year at the national meeting, I look forward to listening to what Larry has to share with us.
Excellent. And we get a lot of feedback like that. So here's a picture of him giving a talk on about using evidence-based approaches, which of course SPDIG always does. I think most of you know that Dr. Wexler was the SPDIG program lead and prior to me, was the first and only other program lead of the SPDIG. He began the SPDIG program and the State Improvement Grant Program before that, and also SIG Network. So welcome, Dr. Wexler.
Well, there we go. Thank you, Jennifer. You know, they say you should have your funeral before you're dead. It's very rewarding. So I feel like to a degree I've been having my funeral. I've had a number of goodbyes, and people have been very kind, and I appreciate the recognition that I'm receiving. I'm the first to, you know, it's the people that have made this program great. It wasn't me, and it's the state people who have taken the ball and ran with it from day one in 1998, and it's and for everything. I mean, I've obviously been looking back on some of the things I've accomplished. I mean, this is my 54th year in the field of disability, and excuse me, and so I have a lot to look back on, and it's always anything that's been accomplished has been accomplished by a group of people, people who are dedicated, people who are smart, people who are caring, and people who put children and families first. So I appreciate the recognition, but in recognizing me, you're recognizing yourselves, and certainly my OSEP colleagues, who are just the best group of people you could ever ask to work with. So anyway,
So Larry, if you're okay with it, we wanted to have a short trivia quiz.
okay, go for it.
And then we're gonna have you share your lessons learned and some tips for us going forward. And then folks are gonna have a chance to share their
I'm used to
memories.
you, Jennifer. I'm used to you controlling me, so you
I
go ahead.
That should be my word for 2024, controlling. All right. So what we're going to do, Kelsey is going to share her screen so we can see the Kahoot questions. What we're finding, because we tried it out with Kristen Perez-Rickles earlier, is that I think some of our firewalls don't allow you to use it on your computer the way it should be used. So you may want to use your cell phone to get the QR code, or you can just log into the Kahoot app and use this number. It looks like some of you are very comfortable with it. Don't even need my directions at all. But this is pretty fun. And Larry, I don't know how much you know about this situation, but your wife and your daughter supplied these questions and answers. So you're in some real trouble. All right.
I'm going to get
Okay.
into deniability right now.
The deniability clause. Push the deniability button on your last week. Okay, great. It looks like folks are getting in. It looks like so we don't have a prize today unless Larry has something he hasn't told us about. We can certainly buy you a drink at the next SIG Network happy hour though. Plus I think some people are just very competitive here. I'm looking at you, Kim St. Martin. All right, let's roll, Kelsey. Kahoot at work. All right. And I'll read it for folks too. What musical instrument did Dr. Wexler play in high school? Was it the tuba, the violin, the trombone, or the guitar? Ooh, got a lot of answers. All right, let's see. It is the trombone, and we had 20 people got it right. Nice. All right, what's next? Kristen Perez-Rickles. Which president did he run with during his lunch hour at OSEP? So this is along the National Mall. Was it George W. Bush, George Bush, Bill Clinton, or Barack Obama? All right. The answer is Bill Clinton, and 13 folks got it. Let's look at the leaderboard. Ooh. Oh, things are changing. Kermit, Scotty, ALAH, and KKF. All right. On to the next. Who was the surprise uninvited guest at his wedding? Was it myself, a barber to cut his hair, his students, or Bill Clinton? Answer is a barber to cut his hair. Not Larry, I hope you'll be commenting on that after the quiz is over. All right. Oh, Scotty and KKF, ALL, Tammy. What sport did Larry teach at summer camp in Maine for several summers? Was it tennis, basketball, soccer, or racquetball? This one's pretty tame. All right, 5, 4. The answer is tennis. Folks got it. All right. And Scotty knows you. Okay, Kermit's on the board. Why did Dr. Wexler and his wife move back to the US from Nova Scotia? Was it they didn't like the weather, they were deported by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or they moved for work? Uh-oh. The answer was they were deported by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Folks didn't guess that, Larry. All right. KKF and Scotty are neck and neck. Where did Dr. Wexler and his wife go on their honeymoon? Was it on a cross-country road trip, Hawaii, Niagara Falls, or India? These questions are getting harder. The answer is on a cross-country road trip. And oh, 311s, okay. Folks generally guessed. Kermit's heading up there. And JTA, highest climber. All right, how many years did he coach his daughter's softball team? Was it 5 years, 1 year, 9 years, or he never coached the team? Answer is 9 years. Kudos to that.
One thing I'm learning here, Jennifer, is maybe the barber got called to the wedding because that was the only time they could get Larry to sit still.
Perhaps, or it was a different era and maybe haircuts weren't so popular. All right, true or false? Dr. Wexler was mistaken for Sean Connery while in Paris. True or false? I actually can't remember this answer, so I'm making my own guess. The answer is true, and 36 people got it. You must be a dead ringer. or a ringer. Sorry, Sean Connery. Okay. Oh, Kermit. KKF, ALL. What is his favorite show tune? Is it My Bill Boy? Oh, What a Beautiful Morning? Some Enchanted Evening? And the answer is My Bill Boy. I've never heard of that song. Jose.
It's My Boy Bill.
Oh, I still haven't heard of it.
Yeah, it's from Carousel. John Raitt sang
Aw.
it. And John Raitt is Bonnie Raitt's father.
Yes, and fun fact, he went to my high school.
Ah,
Prior to me, I'm just gonna say. I went to a very old high school. All right. So I think that was it, right, Kelsey? Oh no, one more. The
Okay, two
character.
more.
Oh, two more. The character, Larry Woloch from One Life to Live, is named after Dr. Wexler. True or false? I do know this answer. 16 said true, 22 say false. The answer is true. All right, final question. I'm impressed by Kermit. What time was his alarm set for most of his career? Was it 3:51 a.m., 9 o'clock p.m., 4:30 a.m., or 6:02 a.m.? And the answer is, the final answer is 3:51 a.m. 10 of you knew that. So who was the winner? Kermit. I don't know who Kermit was, but ALL. And number one, KKF. All right. Well, Kelsey, thank you so much for putting that together. And of course, thank you to Mrs. Wexler and Jade Wexler for help with that. And any thoughts on those questions and answers for us?
Thoughts
Larry?
from me or thoughts
Yeah,
from
now
y'all?
you get to talk. Now I'm shutting up. You talk.
I talk. Okay. Well, let me just clarify one thing.
Sure.
My father-in-law was a soap opera star. So he spent 15 years on As the World Turns and 15 years on One Life to Live. And as a actor, he always had to look good. And I married into the family. Now, when I married Wendy, and that was 54 years ago, all right, this was me. Can you see that?
It's blurry enough to make it look like Charles Manson on my
That's-
side.
It wouldn't. It looks like Charles Manson when it's crystal clear. Believe me,
Okay.
it's a picture that any reasonable person would say, "What could he have been thinking?" So my father-in-law did arrive at the wedding with a barber, with a barber, and he wanted to cut my hair, and I declined that particular invitation. So, and the reason we did get deported from Nova Scotia when we were seniors in college. We drove up to Nova Scotia and bought a house and 100 acres of land, and we went to immigrate there, and I actually got a job teaching in a sort of a separate school for kids with intellectual disabilities, but they wouldn't give me the job because they had too many teachers, and so we were up there, and I got deported because I was not a draft dodger. This was during Vietnam. If you were draft dodging, you could stay. I mean, you could immigrate to Canada and they accepted you, no questions asked. But because I wasn't a draft dodger, they didn't need teachers, so they said, "Get out of here," and in no uncertain terms. So we got being deported meant they said, "Be out of the country in the next week." So, yep, that's a little bit of my history. So. Anyway, I'll be having a discussion with my wife and daughter immediately after this call.
There was some uncertainty about sharing that much, I'm going to say. I didn't force anything, but they were a little
Nah,
uncertain.
they're fine. Listen, I just so you know where I'm coming from, when I announced I was going to retire, and people started asking, well, what are we going to do for you? You know, and what, and I said, look, you know, and I've been to how many, you know, countless retirement, I don't know, whatever you call them, celebrations. What I said was, I want two things. One, I wanted to whatever we do revolve around alcohol, and two, I'd like it to be a roast, because you know, that's just who I am in terms of trying not to take myself too seriously. And when Jennifer's very kind and always will publicly refer to me as Dr. Wexler, but no one calls me doctor. So I appreciate it. Anyway, Jennifer asked me to say something about how SIG Network got started, and I think most of you know the state improvement grant was part of the 97 amendments, and the person who really is responsible for the legislative language was Jolita Reynolds, who was a absolute icon in the field, a close friend of mine. She died probably, I don't know, 15, 18 years ago. But Julita was a former state director in Tennessee and strongly believed in professional development and high quality professional development, and felt like this program would force states to really focus on teachers and personnel in general. So she was considered the mother of the SIG, but I became the stepfather, so to speak. I was working in the monitoring and in MSIP at the time. We were administering the RRCs, which I was the project officer for the RRCs for a year and a half or 2 years, and they actually had a competition to see who would create the SIG program, and I was selected and moved forward with the team to create the actual grant solicitation, the priority. And so we created it. We ran a competition. The first competition we had 36 applications. We had $18 million, and we made 18 awards actually. And those of you've heard me speak before about I worked with a team mostly from research to practice, who actually knew something about discretionary programs. And we got to the point of what's the page limit going to be, and a number of numbers were thrown out. And in my naivety, I said, I don't understand why 50, why 100, why 65? And they didn't have any answers. So I simply said, we're not going to have a page limit. That was one of the great mistakes of my career, because we received applications that were, the narratives were 200-300 pages long and appendices just beyond description. And we had a page limit after that first year, but we got the program going. And to the best of my knowledge, the Western Regional Resource Center took a particular interest in the state improvement grant, and they started offering some support to it. Cesar Degard was a big factor in it, and they were helping us with it. And we had a number of meetings, and they supported the meetings. But the truth was, it really wasn't within their scope of work. But we saw the value of having a network that was just somehow supported, not by project officers, but from an external group that could just do the nuts and bolts work to make something like this successful. And so what happened after that was we said, how are we going to get this funded? And we had the bright idea of putting in the priority, the notice inviting applications, that we were soliciting voluntary donations to the Western Regional Resource Center for them to kind of be the support system for this network. And we were begging for money. It was really pretty hilarious. Well, we got the first year, we got $65,000 in donations, and that allowed the WRRC to have dedicated staff dedicated to the SIG network. And I'm not sure we came up with the name SIG network. I don't actually recall whose idea that was. If it's a good idea, I'll take credit, but I suspect it came from the Western Regional Resource Center. So we created SIG Network, and we created a website and all of the support things that the network, obviously it evolved over the years. But we were a little uncomfortable with relying on donations. I mean, how we got away with that I guess things were a little looser back then. So then we decided, let's try and make it a requirement of getting the grant to put, I guess, I believe it was $3,000, at least initially, to the University of Oregon, this SIG network. And shockingly, our general counsel approved it. And that's when we got a guaranteed funding stream for SIG network. And I think the rest is really history. It's amazing because no other program in the department has emulated it. I get nervous every time we do a new grant priority to put it on the street that someone is going to raise it as an issue. But they never have, and we certainly never did. And so that's where SIG Network came from. Any questions? I'm happy to be interrupted, by the way. I don't have a formal presentation here. Jennifer wanted it to be more of a conversation. So.
What's one thing, Larry, and we didn't practice this beforehand, so if you want to think about it and come back to me later, but what's one thing that you were hoping you would accomplish with SIG Network or the SPDIG prior to becoming the division director that you just didn't get a chance to work on and you kind of hope would still happen?
Well, I think that my vision was to create a support network for the grantees. That, you know, I think you were alluding to it when, at least when I first hopped on the call, Jennifer, that you know, there's just certain things you don't want to discuss with OSAP. You know, I mean, you just don't, because you're not sure. Is it legal? Is it inappropriate? Am I going to get slammed for it? If I say it, it can't be ignored. And so having an external sort of unbiased entity to help coordinate a network and really call it what you want. I mean, to me, it's just a true community of practice. That was kind of my vision. Plus, frankly, there's stuff that we just don't have time for. You know, having your own sort of website, that kind of thing, we couldn't have done that. And certainly the project officers didn't have time to do it. And I also want to say to people, as idiotic as it was, I was the only project officer for I don't know how many years. And I mean, for any number of years, I had at one point, I think, 45 SIGs. And that was my side job. I was the deputy director of MSIP at the time. So, you know, it just provided a structure that made the administration of it as a program, and the it allowed the project officers to be more thought partners. And the other thing is, my vision was to create a program rather than a bunch of grants. And that's something that's lacking across our Department of Education. You know, the idea that grants are funded, but they're just sort of balkanized in separate entities, and they don't talk to each other. If they do, it's almost by accident. Whereas the way this is set up, you can't avoid it. And the peer-to-peer learning and peer-to-peer support was certainly what I had hoped for. Now, that being said, you know, I had it for X amount of years, but I handed it to Jennifer, and she put conditions She put conditions on that handoff, which I believe I met her conditions, but she took it so far beyond anything that I had envisioned, and you know, she has to get so much of the credit for this SIG program.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you mentioned Jolita too, because I don't know if anyone who's with us right now ever met Jolita, but she was just, and I didn't get to be around her as long as Larry did, but she just was kind of a mastermind of IDEA, right? Like, and how things should play out, and really saw things that others don't. And sometimes I miss having more visionary people who are really like looking ahead. I don't know that I can be that person, but people who are going beyond just what you have to get accomplished that day or that week or that month or that year, who can see the broader picture. So, I'm sure there are things that you wish you had time to accomplish. You were here with us for a while. You've been, did you say 53 years in education, Larry? Yeah. But what, like, if there was one big thing that's beyond the horizon of what we're doing right now, what do you wish? It doesn't have to be this big, but just generally for kids with disabilities. What do you
I'll
hope
tell you what,
we'll do?
I'll preface it by saying, I'll tell you what I think my greatest failure has been. Okay. And I'll preface it by saying, I think one of my greatest accomplishments was the generation of the restraint and seclusion resource document, which was frankly my project. And I carried it all the way through the department and carried it through HHS and SAMHSA and the Department of Justice, and carried it through the Office of Management and Budget, and then through the Hill, because there was a lot of interest in Congress on this particular thing. That document, which had no regulatory force, I think has influenced just millions of children, quite frankly, because it gave the states, it gave districts, and it gave schools our best thinking about how children should be responded to in terms of restraint and seclusion. So I consider that one of my greatest accomplishments. My greatest failure is I tried over the last decade to do a similar document on wandering, of kids wandering from school, generally kids with disabilities, frequently kids with autism, but non-disabled kids also, but wandering from school and ending up dead. And I just could not get enough traction in the department to get that make that happen. I wrote it, quite frankly. Had a couple of doc interns over the years who helped me with it, shopped it with permission to Autism Speaks and the Autism Self-Advocacy Network and others. Had agreement on language, compromised, the people had strong feelings about this particular topic, and but never got it done. And I'm leaving it in the hands of Christy Kavalik, who's much more likable than me and maybe has a better chance of actually getting it done. But that to me is something I wish I could say we had accomplished.
Yeah, I think one of the things I wanted to share in terms of what, in this sphere that I thought was one of your greatest accomplishments was, some of the words that, I don't know if you caught all of them, Larry, at the beginning, but there were words like collaboration and partnership. And I felt like you treated you saw the importance, and Joanne Cashman and the IDA partnership reminds me of this a little bit. You saw the importance of treating people really well and treating them like their time mattered and like they had something to bring to the table. When the SIG network would come together, as opposed to, I am the federal person, I will stay behind this podium, I will tell you what's supposed to happen and it will happen. And you saw, you shared the contributions that people could make coming together, but that you really needed to treat them well and show them that they mattered. And then that's when that was going to happen. And yeah, I learned a lot from that. One of the things I learned a lot from.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because I've always said, I hope when I leave that people say that I treated people well. Because there's a lot of situations, certainly within our department, but I'm sure each of you in the States can point to many situations where people are just mean-spirited and feel like pulling people down is the way to pull yourself up. You know, and one of the other things I can't talk about really is, you know, when one of our when one of our politicals came in this administration and started quizzing me on what have you done, blah 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 blah, you know, and you know, new politicals tend to think they have all the answers, and plus they think federal workers are generally lazy and stupid, but they change their opinion fairly rapidly. But one of the things I said to this person is you can't always judge people on what they accomplished and what they made happen. You also have to judge them on what they stopped from happening. And in especially the previous administration, there were times when, I mean, you have no idea how regressive so much of what they wanted to do was, and how we fought successfully some of those things. So you can't say, hey, they wanted to do this and I stopped it. I can't, you know, that would be sort of inside baseball. Can't share that. But so that's always a component of, it's not just what you accomplished, it's what you stopped from happening that would have been very negative to the field.
That's right. All right. Well, now is an opportunity for folks to share with you memories they have or well wishes they have for you. And so we're going to give folks first an opportunity to do a Mentimeter, and then folks can also after that use their video and mic or their chat. So Kelsey is going to give us the Menti. Have you ever used Mentimeter, Larry? It's kind of fun because it gives you word clouds and some different ways of looking at things. And so look at folks, look in your chat. You just use the link, and the first thing that'll come up is share your favorite Dr. Wexler memory here.
Jennifer, if people are typing and thinking, you know, one thing that jumped out to me is during the trivia game that we did, you know, Larry, I always enjoyed talking with you from the first time I shook your hand. I can't remember when that was, but at a national meeting. And, you know, I've been surprised every time I hear the origin story of the SIG network and the SPDIG, how it really was an adventure. It's kind of how I viewed it. You know, you kind of striking out and figuring out how to make it happen. And, you know, during the trivia game, I realized that I think you've always had that adventuresome spirit, being deported from Canada, driving across country for your honeymoon. And so you know, I really admire and appreciate people with adventuresome spirit. So thank you.
Great. And Larry, you're seeing all of them on the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, gosh, I'm not going to read them out because people have heard from me enough.
Larry, I'll jump in real quick and just want to say, first, I appreciate the amazing service you put in. There, I can't think of anyone at your level that has dedicated so much time, decades of service to the profession, and we all appreciate that very much. Definitely be sorely missed, but you leave a great legacy. Just chuckling to myself, one thing I definitely will miss too, other than your leadership, are the subway stories, the DC subway stories. Definitely always had a chuckle at the conferences when you give our updates on those. So really appreciate it. Congratulations too on a career well done, and hope you enjoy retirement.
Thank you.
Well, I'd be willing to join in here since I'm probably the person who's known Larry the longest of anybody in the screen. Hey, Larry.
This is Carol Cork, right? You're not immediately popping up just the way that the screen is.
Okay, yes, this is
yeah.
Carol Quirk.
Got it.
And I met Larry when I was a baby, back in the 1900s, in the way back days. And he was, I don't know if you remember this, Larry, but you were slumped down against the wall of the conference center with your best friend, I guess, a friend of yours who was attending with you. And I was with a colleague of mine and we chatted up, and, you know, that was that. And a year later, I went into a doctoral program at Hopkins, and I walked into my very first seminar, and there was Larry Wexler, the guy I had met a year earlier at the TASH conference. And so Larry and I were in a doctoral program together, and it was the first year of this program, a personnel prep funded by OSEP, around severe disabilities. And in our class cohort, we had several people who have become, now many retired, people who have been really major contributions in the field, including one who was the major consultant expert in the Oberti case, and others who've, you know, done research. And over those years, you know, Larry and I would always bump into each other, usually at an OSEP conference, a TASH conference, or some other where he was doing the the upfront fabulous presentation, as he was fabulous. And it has been, Larry, it's been really a pleasure to see you grow over the years and provide to the field the leadership that you have.
Thank you, Carol.
Yep, and
Jennifer,
I
I'd
also-
like to
Yes, please,
jump
Karen.
in.
Yeah,
Thank you.
please.
I'm sorry.
No.
First of all, I want to echo what John said as we first started this afternoon about how he was always inspired when he heard you speak. And I always feel that way. And Larry, you probably don't know me. I'm Karen Suddeth. I live in Georgia. I know my accent doesn't give that away, but I've always enjoyed your wit and wisdom. And I do think that you have pioneered something in OSEP that you don't see in other places, which is that network that you're talking about in the collaborative spirit among this group. There's not anybody on this call today that I don't feel like I could call. And some I have called, and it has been resourceful at times when we needed an evaluator. I knew that I could go to the SIG network and I could find that evaluator, and it happened quicker than I ever dreamed it would. When I needed a fidelity instrument, I could pick up the phone and call Kim St. Martin. I could have one that afternoon. So I think that network and that collaboration is here. But one thing, and I don't know if this ever found its way back to you or not, and I say this with some shame, but you'll understand, I always called you my Valentine. And the reason being was it never failed. In February, you always sent me an email. And whereas I called it a Valentine, it was your email to me saying you have a large available balance. And I would work the rest of the year not to get the Valentine the following year, but you will probably, I'm surprised you haven't heard that. Karen says you send her a Valentine every year. And then when you moved it one year, I said, well, maybe I'll get something in my Easter basket. And then it became a summer watermelon. But for many years, it was a Valentine, and we appreciated your support and your guidance as we worked through our large available balances, but we always spent it and still will. Thank you so much for your wisdom, your wit, and everything you've done, especially for students with disabilities. And for me as an educator, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And Shadarupa Potter, I'm sure you remember her, Larry says, I second Karen. Larry's foresight and nurturing the collaboration in the SIG SPDIG arena has helped all of us to grow in our field.
And this is Susan Wagner. I'll go ahead and jump in. I first met Larry in 2004. And at the time, I was the evaluator for the Wyoming SIG. And for many years after this, I had the pleasure of hearing Larry give the opening or closing remarks at the SPDIG conference. And as many of you know and have already attested to, Larry has a gift for public speaking. And I will definitely miss hearing Larry's stories about the Metro. But more importantly, Larry wasn't just a funny Metro storyteller. He was also a motivational speaker, inspiring us to action to improve the outcomes for students with disabilities. There's a saying that goes, at the end of the day, people won't remember what you said or did. They will remember how you made them feel. And so while I can't remember all of Larry's inspirational words over the years, I do remember how Larry made me feel. And that is as a valuable part of this ginormous effort surrounding students with disabilities. So thank you, Larry. And one last thing, when I first started working as the evaluator for the Wyoming SIG, the Wyoming SPDIG director was Holly Gerard. And Larry, do you remember when Holly gave you a bobblehead that looked like you sometime in 2007 or 8?
He still has it.
Okay.
I do have it. Oh, I thought it was right here because my grandson thinks it's hilarious.
Okay. Well, I wanted to know if you remembered it and you still had it. I'm glad you still have it. And be sure to think of Wyoming every time you look at it. So thank you.
But he's going to find it.
Yep, here it is. I don't know. You know, Jennifer, you might want to take the Menti down.
Sure.
that you can see
Kelsey, you want to do that?
faces.
Thank you so
But
much.
yeah, here it is.
Okay, there you go.
The SIG bobblehead of the year award. I don't know.
It's not quite the Manson hairstyle, but it's still
Yeah,
in between.
Oh.
Aw, that's sweet. Susan, thank you for sharing that.
And Jennifer, if I could,
Sure, Kim.
yeah. So Larry, I haven't had the gift of getting to know you for a long time. Steve Goodman was the person who was leading Michigan SPDIG. I have had the gift of being very close friends with Jade, with your daughter, who's upstairs at your house. And I will say, I'm uber, I am very competitive. And so during the Kahoot, Jay did say, I can help you. Like, just tell me what the question. And she did. She helped me towards the end with some. But I just everything that folks had said, I've learned about how passionate you are. I've heard you present. You really have you inspire us to be better for our students and teachers in the States. And it's a very cool experience to also see the impact that you've had on your daughter. And she has shared with me 2 letters that she wrote. She nominated you for a couple of awards, and she just said to me, I'd love to share them with you so you can hear the amazing things that I had to share about my dad. So, I mean, even though I had reached out to her this morning and I said, Jade, how are you doing? How's your dad doing? Getting ready to retire? How are you doing? And she had said, it's sad. She goes, I'm going to miss being with him. She goes, but I'm really happy. And I just, as a Jade and I both have Logans. I have a Logan, she has a Logan. And I just think, you know, you clearly are not only an amazing person, you've been impactful to people in our space, but you also seem to be an amazing dad. And I think during retirement, you're going to continue to be an amazing dad and an amazing grandpa as you're helping Logan get off the bus, because you've got the bus stop right outside your house. And so I just really want to thank you. And it's just been a gift getting to learn through you, with you, and to be able to extend that to Jade as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. It is the highest praise, right? Taking care of the people around you, like Larry was saying, but also taking care of your family at the same time. Right? What we're all hoping for.
Well, actually, Jade is probably the better known Dr. Wexler. She in that research world, sometimes people say to me, do you have any connection to that Jade Wexler at University of Maryland?
Little.
If you hear a bunch of noise, it happens that my Logan just arrived, so I can hear him upstairs. So I don't know if he'll run downstairs or not. But there. Hey, I'm in a meeting. Come say hello. Hey, let's not talk like that. So,
Hey, Jade.
he's showing off.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. So we did have Deb Telfer also sent something for me to share. If you don't mind. Deb Telfer was the project director in Ohio for a long time, and so worked with Larry. And so I'm gonna read it if that's okay. And I might actually share this one just because it's long and I think visuals helpful. So I met Larry many years ago while working in the Office for Exceptional Children, formerly the Division for Special Education, at the Ohio Department of Education. He was instrumental in establishing the SIG program for SEAs, and Ohio was fortunate to be among the group to receive an award through the initial competition. The SPIDIG allowed us to change the conversation in district schools and with regional providers, and to a degree with Ohio Department of Education. It provided one of the few openings we had to initiate meaningful systems change efforts that had the potential to make Ohio's education system more responsive to and accountable for children and youth with disabilities. As differentiated accountability came into being under NCLB, I would get called out of whatever meeting I happened to be in as soon as the state report card results were released, with a message from the state superintendent saying, "What are you going to do to fix this?" Since special education was viewed as the primary reason why districts went into improvement status, my response was always, "Don't you mean what are we going to do about it?" Special education within SEAs can be a lonely place. Special ed offices are sometimes on the outside looking in, maintaining focus on and responsibility for all key functions of state agency work, curriculum, and everyone can think about all your hats that you wear at the SEA while I'm saying these one. Curriculum, assessment, compliance, improvement, etc. for students with disabilities, while trying to change the system in ways that help the adults change mindsets and share responsibility for the success of each child. Throughout the many policy changes and over the course of my 25-year tenure at Ohio Department of Education, Larry was one of our very few sources of real support. I called him periodically, always very early in the morning. He told me once that he regretted telling me he arrived early at the office. And he always answered the phone. This was no small thing and was emblematic of what I believe was Larry's deep commitment to OSEP and to supporting states to do the right thing for kids. Having navigated many political administrations, Larry's insights and fundamental truths, example, relationships matter, shared honestly and without sugarcoating, helped us navigate whatever issues we were confronting at the time. We didn't always like his answer, but we always benefited from his advice. Larry, your retirement feels like the end of an era, and I'm saddened by it. At the same time, I'm very happy for you. You've made a tremendous difference in the lives of countless children, their families, and the educators and agency personnel who support them. I wish you all the best in retirement. Yep. I thought that was just a nice encapsulation. And I didn't, I actually didn't read this earlier because I wanted it to be the first time I read it too. So it's just so nice to hear all the things that I think and other folks think, and just encapsulated here in someone who's had such a long relationship with you.
So Deb is completely correct. She used to call, I used to get to the office about 6:30 in the morning, and she learned to call me very early. But we've mentioned Jolita Reynolds. Jolita was the person that any state director could call day or night. I mean, she worked 24/7. And I used to have a little bit of a competition to see who could get into the office earlier. And so I do remember one day we had to sign in when we went. If you got in before 6:30, before maybe 7, you had to sign in. There was no electronic anything. It was, back in the early 90s probably. And I used to sign in, and I would see, and Jolita will have signed in, a half hour, 45 minutes before me, an hour, 5:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. And one day I went in and her name wasn't on there, and I was really impressed with myself. I'd finally beat Jolita. Well, it was a mixed blessing because I looked up the sign-in sheet and to the sign out part, and she had signed out at 4:30 in the morning.
Oh, no.
So she
Oh.
I'm gonna actually have more of a meeting to do, and Jennifer asked me to say just a few things about general advice. And what the former state director of Wisconsin once said, that the SPDIG money was the only money that a state director was able to be creative with, that it was under their control, not the state superintendent. And it was so critical to being able to drive change in the state. And I believe that that's what the congressional intent was when that law was put, when that legislative language was actually codified. The one advice I will give you is, when you apply for a new one, make sure you apply to do what you think is the right thing to do. There's been a lot of tinkering with the language in the SPDG grant priority, the application. And tinkering is code for me. It's code for an administration putting in what they want to happen. And of course, they're the elected administration. That's understandable. But I think it's really important to remember that the bedrock, the foundation of the SPDG, in fact, in the introduction to IDEA, it says very clearly that states are in the best position to know what is needed within their state. And, states are in the best position. Y'all are in the best position to know what's needed in your state. And I would be cautious about applying to do things that you really don't think are important just to get extra points. Now, that's easy to say when I don't need the money and you do. And but there's got to be a middle ground there where you certainly need to get as many points as you can. It's a highly competitive program. But on the other hand, make sure when you read that application that you are submitting that you're okay with getting funded to do those things. It's a great program. It couldn't be better. I always said the greatest thing, and it's consistent with Jennifer's, all her scale up work. The greatest thing about the SPDG is that you can get money to create innovation zones. And with positive results and strong data from those innovation zones, your state director can go to the legislature and broker money to scale up those initiatives. And the scale up and the request for money is based on data, as opposed to we think this is a good idea. And so congratulations, you're all doing fantastic work. This was a wonderful, thank you to Jennifer and John for organizing this. And it's very frankly validating and gratifying to me to hear, frankly, it feels good, I have to say. So I hope that you continue to do great. And I'm hoping in the future during retirement to kind of keep my keep involved in different capacities. I'm not sure what those will be yet, but I think that we do great work, we meaning all of us, for the right reasons and for the right people. So thank you. And thank you to Carol Quirk, who's known me longer than anyone, I'm sure, on this call. The good news was when we realized we had met in Denver, I had to rack my brain and check what was my behavior under those circumstances.
That's exactly right.
It's true. And I didn't do anything too offensive. So at least we remained good friends and remain good friends across many decades. So thank you all. Jennifer, thank you, and happy trails.
Okay.
Take care.
Appreciate
Alrighty.
it. Thanks
Bye.
for joining us. Bye.
Bye, Larry.
Thanks everyone for preparing something and for sharing, and especially for those of you who have known Larry for a while. And a big thank you to Kelsey, because as you know, we are coming off of vacation, and then I was sick even before vacation. And so she put everything together in the last 24 hours, basically. So, and it was a perfect Kahoot. So thank you so much, Kelsey. Appreciate it. All right, so we're going to delve into a little bit. I'm going to try to make it fast and fun. Delve into a little bit of Title IIA data just to get the conversation going. Honestly, the information brings up more questions for me than answers. And I'd love to get your thoughts as if you know anything about your state's data and what lies behind the numbers. But I want to start off with just an interesting idea. And that is, so the Title IIA program, if I recall correctly, I was just looking at these numbers again, so hopefully I'm getting it right. But guess how much money goes to Title IIA formula grants across all the states? Nope. So I went to the wrong one. Sorry. So guess how much goes to Title IIA? Anyone? No?
10
2.1
billion got put in the chat, Jennifer.
Oh, 10 billion did, thanks. 2.1 billion. Guess what the FTE is at the US Department of Education to oversee all this. Every state has the grants, right? Lots of districts in the states get the money, most probably. Guess how many FTE at the US Department of Education oversee the $2.1 billion program? 1.8. Not even a full 2 people. Yeah. So the reason I bring that up is because I've got questions, but you know what? I don't have anyone to get answers from. They don't have time to talk to me. I got someone on the way out the door. She's Libby Witt, has been with us for a long time, and she was going out the door. I was like, I really would love to hear your lessons learned and everything. And she's like, fine, I'll give you 15 minutes. And boy, you know, it's like in my and this is Congress makes those decisions, right, about how much money can go to the U.S. Department of Education, but there's only so much you can do if you got 1.88 people looking at this work. So real quick, one of the questions was that you answered in your survey was about, oh, sorry, we're going to go to the report, was about job embedded professional development. And I think for me, that's always been the one that's like, so what exactly does that mean? Because it doesn't define it further in ESEA or anywhere else specifically in law, right? In the law where it's provided. And so, you know, you can kind of make guesses, but what is it exactly? And so I wasn't sure if anyone else has ever felt this way. And so I found an article in ERIC. It's old, but the definition hasn't changed. So I figured it still worked. So it talks about, it's about teacher learning that's grounded in day-to-day teaching practice and designed specifically about their content-specific instructional practices, right? I think the content specific, because everything you're doing with teachers is pretty much for what happens in the classroom, right? Like that's the big idea. But I think it's the content specific part that's important here. So school or classroom based, integrated in the work day. This is another important part. Teachers assessing and finding solutions themselves. That's another interesting part for authentic and immediate problems of practice. And you'll notice this is from so long ago. Learning Forward was called the National Staff Development Council back then. So 2010. Again, like I just don't think this has really changed, and that's why I provided it. It's ongoing process that's locally rooted, makes a direct connection between learning and application in daily practice. So it's that active teacher involvement, cooperative, inquiry-based work. So these, I'm bringing this up because I think these are important things for us to think about and what that looks like for the SPDIC. And you know better than I do what you're doing with the SPDIC in these areas. These aren't specifically, you know, worded in the same way in your evidence-based professional development worksheet. And that's, you know, something for us to think about. It's aligned with state standards for student academic achievement related to local LEA and school improvement efforts. So there's that coherence piece, like how does it fit with what you're trying to accomplish? And also the standards. So thinking about what the state standards are, and then the curriculum that aligns with them, and then the content for the curriculum that you're teaching, how you assess that content, and how does that all line up with what you're trying to improve. So these are some big ideas for us to get more into. And if anyone wants to share anything in the chat or thoughts about that, you know, I think it's an area we can focus in on. And from that article, I thought this was helpful. They talk about, you know, so what does that look like? And if you can't see the heading here, but on the left side, this is like, you know, this like real, like in the classroom happening right then. What does that look like? This is alone, and then below it's the group. And it's just giving some examples. So this is where they're coaching, because coaching, you might have noticed, is not in the definition. But this is where they're saying this is where coaching takes place, is the job embedded aspect, and getting coach observation and interaction when things are going on with the students. The next part is mentor conferencing before or after a session. And then, you know, a little bit further out is that next one. And then the far right is, you know, this is not job embedded. So this is something, you know, discussion in the teacher's lounge, something along those lines. So going all the way from in the classroom at the moment that they can learn from it to the furthest away from that. So some other data about Title II-A, other than the FTE spent on it. So the percentage of districts using the funds, the Title II-A funds, this is how they use it. So 75% of them use it for professional development. 33% use it for recruitment, hiring, retaining. Class size reduction, 20%, evaluation systems, 8%, and other 25%, which is the other's kind of unknown. And then the right is the share of the funds allocated for it. So 75% of districts might be using it, but what percentage is going toward the professional development? And that's 55% of funds. You can see 18% recruitment and hiring. Class size reduction. The class size reduction one is interesting because it's kind of, it's not an agreed upon evidence-based strategy, right? It's not, I personally think the jury is still out on it, but it's not, you could not say it's, you can't look to a meta-analysis that says, yes, this is an evidence-based strategy. Okay, these are how the states overall are using it. So they're using money, and they've got this set aside money that they can use, and that set aside money, they can use it for administration, monitoring, technical assistance. So they're doing that. They're also using money for professional development, recruitment, equitable access. Think about like the teachers, if they have their credentials, if they've had experience, etc. And then you can see the share of the funds on the right side. Evaluation systems, still there, but a much less in terms of overall funds. And then this is the kind of professional development districts are using it for. Short-term, that whole thing about like the sustained and but short-term, 3 days or fewer, or conferences, by far the largest amount of funds. Long-term, lesser, collaborative, and job embedded. Again, it's supposed to be a requirement, right, for these funds. And you can see they're being honest, it's not happening as much. This is how many, the percentage of funds used for teachers versus principals, or teachers and principals. And so 87% of funds go to teachers, 18% of funds go to principals and other leaders. And then this is just to give you a sense, it's not all the states, but give you a sense of different states. You can see what they're using their funds for, or the percentage of districts using the funds for these different kinds of activities. And then this is the kinds of topics that the professional development is focused on. On the left side, it's the percentage of districts funding that topic in professional development. On the right side, it's if it's one of the two largest expenditures of the funds. So helping teachers improve instruction, it's very broad. That could look a million different ways. School improvement planning, advancing organizational development, developing and managing. And this is principal professional development specifically. And then engaging parents in the community, which 26% of districts were using it when they are supplying professional development to administrators, but only 4% of the funds were going there. And I would personally love to know what that training looked like, right? What the focus was. And then you can see, this is the same idea, but this is for the teachers, the kind of professional development that they're getting. And so instructional strategies for academic subjects, and then English language arts, data and assessments to guide instruction, behavior management, STEM, meeting state content standards, technology, other subjects, students with disabilities. So although 40% say they're using it for it, only 4% of funds are going in that direction, which makes it sound like maybe it's just the special education teachers, which isn't necessarily what we want. All right. So my question to you is, how does your SPDIG interact with Title IIA in your state? What does that interaction look like, if you know of it? And you can use your mic or respond in the chat. And if folks don't know, I'd be interested in that too. Just, that connection isn't being made. Okay, good.
I don't know.
Yep. This is helpful. Then back to the FTE. I've tried to make inroads in this area for a long time, and it's because of how few staff there are and other challenges with that. It's Learning Forward has been more of the connection, right? Since that's their focus area, despite the fact they're outside the department. Okay. Yeah, I think so. I think you all are gonna be, that's gonna be how it's done, is in the States, for the most part. And so I'd be interested if anyone does make inroads in the next month, if you're able to make a contact, if you're able to have a conversation, I would love to hear about it next month when we meet. And maybe we can create a plan together. That's a lot of money, $2.1 billion. You know, we have like $36 million for the SPDIC. So there's a lot more money going out there that we could be interacting with. Okay, so sorry, that's the end of the Title IIA, kind of quick and dirty, but I wanted to give you a sense, and I'll put the link to it in the chat in just a second too, so you can see the report yourself. It's on the U.S. Department of Education website. The reports are very nice. There's some really good information. You know, despite having not enough FTE, they've done a good job with that. So book club, just a reminder, it's coming up. January 22nd is the first meeting at 3 o'clock. You are welcome to join even if you don't have the book, and people are welcome to come to one meeting, but not all of them. It's really open, but folks who signed up do have it on their calendar. Let us know if you don't have it and if you want to join. Orientation for new SIG Network members. Folks were just saying, you know, there's a lot of new people, and or maybe you're not so new, but just want a refresher. So for new or other project personnel, we have it on January 16th at 1 o'clock. We'll be meeting for an hour. And for evaluators who do want a refresher or who are new, January 16th at 2 o'clock. And it's just going to be kind of like a nuts and bolts SIG Network, SPDIG kind of thing. If you haven't received an invitation, just go ahead and drop something in the chat or email Kelsey at signetwork@uoregon.edu. We have a new community, the Early Childhood Work Group. You don't have to be focused on early childhood in your SPDIG or have a component of that to join the group. But if you do, this is a really nice opportunity to have a conversation. Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center is helping to lead this group along with Sung Young An, an OSEP project officer, and whoever comes. It's going to be a generative group. It's going to be fun. All are welcome. You can see January 23rd at 3 o'clock is the first meeting. The SPDIG actual meeting, we already talked about the dates. And Kelsey, what outcome did we get on the October 22nd, 23rd dates?
So we have only one person who says they're unable to make it. I believe
Okay.
4 responses saying they're unsure, but the majority of folks, I think about 80%, said that yes, those dates would work.
Okay, great. So it looks like we're gonna try to lock that in with Georgetown. The university has some good space. We're gonna try that out. I'm just now seeing a couple of chats about Title IIA. Good. So leveraging Title IIA dollars for their MTSS training. Good, because MTSS takes a lot of training. State level, utilize the Teacher Learning Hub for online PD and collaborate with the state level staff on training events and conferences. Great, Tammy, thank you. North Carolina, the focus of Title IIA is on teacher licensure. There's some connections with SPDIG as it assists with licensing through EVP courses. This is great. All right, so if you have not made that connection, I would love for you to make the connection to Title IIA, come back and tell us about it next month. And then the other thing we're gonna start doing next month is sharing what you learn at conferences and trainings that you've gone to. So the things, not that you're providing, but that you go to. I went to Learning Forward last month. Was anyone else at Learning Forward here? I saw Stacy from New York. I can't remember if I saw anyone else. Anyways, it was really good. It always is, you know, it's our stuff. It's professional development, about professional development. It's meta. And, but I was getting all these great tools. And I was like, you know, I can put these all in the newsletter and give those to you. But if you're going to great conferences, trainings, etc., you don't put out a newsletter, and we'd all love to learn from you. And so please do start collecting just a few key big ideas, couple of resources, whatever jumps out at you, and being ready to share those on our directors webinars, because we'll start off you know, we'll do the research minute, we'll do some sharing in that way. And that whole idea of learning lab, it's just another way, you know, that we can spread the wealth, because we don't get to go to a lot of trainings or conferences, or at least I don't. So I want to be able to learn from you. Any questions about anything I just shared, upcoming events, or sharing from conferences? And in the meantime, I'm going to put the report on job embedded, and then also the Title IIA report in the chat if you want to take a good look at it. And it sounds like the contractor may be changing for the Title IIA, so hopefully we'll still have good data going forward. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, to Kelsey and John, and to everyone for joining in on Larry's celebration. I know that meant a lot to him, and I think it's really important for us that, you know, an era is ending and we need to say goodbye to it and honor it, and also, you know, continue to generate really good work in honor of all the things that Larry has done for our group, and that you all have done together as a collaborative body. Great. Thank you, Becky. Good to see you. And we'll see you, I'm sure we'll see you beforehand, but definitely next month, first Thursday. Thank you.